Welcome, friend. I'm Jack, host of the channel, and today we're diving into another episode. Pour yourself a drink and get comfortable, because I've got a powerful story coming your way. If something hits deep, drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into it.
"Daddy, please come home," were the first words out of my daughter's mouth when she called me at my duty station in Afghanistan. "What's wrong, sweetie?" I asked. "It's Mom, Dad." Even with the poor video quality, I could tell she was crying. "What's going on with Mom?" I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "She's seeing another man," she said. My heart sank. My beautiful wife of 18 years had always been so devoted to me and to our daughter, Grace. "How do you know this, honey?" "You must be mistaken," I said, hoping she was wrong. "Dad, she's been out with him 2 or 3 nights a week. Sometimes she doesn't come home until 2 or 3 in the morning. And this morning, she didn't come home until almost 7. I am scared, Dad." I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. "Do you know who the man is, Grace?" "I think his name is Paul something. Paul Anderson." "Yes, that's him. I saw him once when he picked Mom up. Tall, kind of thin, with short black and gray hair. If that's who it is, he's a city council member. He drives a fancy car and sometimes picks Mom up in a limousine." That made sense. Sandra had worked on his election campaign. Maybe she was just going out with him for work or something. But if that were the case, why was she staying out so late? "I need you here, Daddy. Come home, please," Grace pleaded with me. "Honey, I'll see what I can do. But whatever you do, don't say anything to your mom." "I won't, Dad. But please, please hurry before something really bad happens." "I'll do my best. I love you, Grace." "I love you too, Dad." My name is Michael Harris. I am 44 years old and a design specialist for a major technology company. I am also a captain in the Army Reserve, which is why I am currently on a 6-month assignment in Afghanistan, serving on the command staff. I have been married to the love of my life, Sandra, for 18 years. Our pride and joy is our 15-year-old daughter, Grace. Sandra is 42, but looks even younger. She is the most beautiful woman I have ever known. 5'8" with a fantastic figure that actually became more defined after she gave birth to our daughter. Her blonde hair cascades down to her shoulders, and her green eyes always sparkle when she smiles, which is often. I could honestly say our marriage had been solid, even when I was deployed. Our time together has been warm and loving. I never doubted her faithfulness, nor she mine. So, what happened? I did not have a clue. I completed all the necessary paperwork for 30 days of emergency family leave and caught a flight back. 26 hours later, I found myself renting a car at our hometown airport and driving home. It was Thursday evening at 6:30 when I parked the car half a block from my house. The early December sun had already set, and the streetlights cast an eerie glow over the neighborhood. I could see that the lights were on in the living room, kitchen, and upstairs master bedroom. I saw my wife walk past the window a couple of times. It looked like she was getting ready to go out. I called my daughter's cell phone, and after 3 rings, she answered softly. "Daddy, is that you?" "Yes, sweetie, don't say anything, but I'm here, just half a block away." "Oh, Daddy, thank you," she whispered, starting to cry. "Is Mom going out tonight?" "I think so. She's been in her room for over an hour. I heard the shower, and now I can hear her humming. She seems pretty excited about her night." "Yeah, I guess. It makes me sick. Daddy, why is she doing this to us?" "I don't know, Grace, and your mom might not know either. Let's not judge her until we find out what's really going on." "What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet. I guess I'll follow them and see what's happening before I decide how to respond." "Be careful. Daddy, do you need to change clothes?" "No, I think my camouflage fatigues will stand out enough to create a little shock and awe when the time comes." "Good luck, Daddy. I love you." "I love you too, Grace, and no matter what, you and I will always be together." At 7 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled into my driveway, and a tall, slender, well-dressed man stepped out of the car. I thought he'd go to the door, but he spoke on his cell phone for a few moments, and then the lights went out in the master bedroom. A minute later, the door opened, and my wife stepped out onto the porch. She made sure the door was locked behind her, then walked quickly toward her date with a big smile on her face. She looked stunningly beautiful, and my heart shattered into a million pieces when I saw her glance back at the house to make sure Grace wasn't watching before she gave our esteemed wife stealing council member a warm kiss on the lips. He helped her into the car, and they drove away. Luckily, I was steady enough to snap a picture of the kiss with my cell phone. I followed them at a safe distance, and since traffic was light, I had no trouble keeping up with them. They drove across town and pulled into the parking lot of the Westin Hotel. I parked several spaces away and watched them as they exited the car and entered the building. They walked closely together with their arms around each other, and I snapped another photo. It was obvious their affair had been going on for some time. They were so comfortable together. They looked like a married couple out on a date night. I waited until they were inside the hotel before I put on my camouflage hat and sunglasses and followed them. When I got inside, I could not see them, but was not worried. I got some of the usual smiles and "thank you for your service" comments, which I acknowledged while checking the information board that listed the events taking place inside the hotel. One stood out, the St. Francis Hospital Charity Ball. It was in the third-floor ballroom, and music from the live orchestra was already filtering down to the lobby. Avoiding the bank of elevators that were shuttling well-dressed couples up to the ballroom, I took the stairs, not wanting to be seen too soon and realizing my legs needed the exercise after sitting on a series of long flights. When I got to the third floor, I followed the music and easily found the ballroom. I walked past the entrance slowly, glancing inside, and sure enough, there they were, just inside the doorway, looking and acting like a happy couple, greeting friends and supporters. My wife actually glanced back and looked right at me for a second, but I saw no recognition on her face. Why would there be? As far as she knew, I was still thousands of miles away fighting in Afghanistan. Oh, and I also noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding rings. When I passed the entrance, I went into the men's room and sat in a stall, trying to plan my next moves. I was struggling to grasp what I had seen. I was so sure that my marriage with Sandra was as solid as any marriage could be. How foolish I felt. The whole time I was in Afghanistan, serving my country, my loving wife was here at home betraying me, breaking our wedding vows. And what about all those people they were meeting and greeting? Didn't they know the woman clinging to the councilman was married to an army officer serving overseas? I felt warm tears start to roll down my cheeks, but I wiped them away. There was no time for self-pity. I had a plan to make and carry out. At that moment, I had a very different enemy to confront than insurgents. I stayed in the bathroom stall for half an hour, giving the festivities plenty of time to get underway before I made my way through the ballroom door. Only a few people at the entrance noticed me as I edged close to the wall and slowly moved to an area away from the bar and food tables to a vantage point behind a pillar, where I had a clear view of most of the room. I did not have a ticket to get into the event, but my uniform had more clout than any piece of paper. The young man taking tickets even saluted me and said, "Welcome, sir," as I came through the door. I thought to myself, it is too bad my wife and her lover do not have that kind of respect for me and the uniform I wear. It took me a few minutes to locate Sandra and her companion. They were dancing to a slow song, my wife's arms around his neck, her head against his chest, his hands resting possessively on her back. I managed to take several photos, but it took all my willpower to keep from rushing onto the floor and punching the guy and kneeing him where it would hurt most. But that would only give me a small amount of satisfaction and likely put me in jail. What I wanted, what I needed, was undeniable proof of their affair. And then I would find a fitting way to exact revenge for their complete disrespect for me, our daughter, and the United States Army. They danced another dance, then, arm in arm, made their way to their table, sharing a tender kiss and embrace before they sat down. I captured it all in photos. I had seen enough for the moment, so I made my way out to the hallway and found a seat where I could watch the ballroom doors and the elevators. As an Army officer, I had learned patience, and it paid off, as 2 more hours went by before the event began to wind down and people started leaving the ballroom and heading for the elevators. Soon enough, my wife and the council member made their exit and stood just outside the doors, talking. After a minute, they smiled at each other and turned toward the bank of elevators on their left. But instead of pressing the down button, they chose the one that would take them up. That was odd. I was only about 15 feet away from them, sitting on a bench against the wall, wearing my camouflage fatigues and sunglasses, my name tag clearly displayed on my uniform, looking completely out of place amid the tuxedos and ball gowns. While many other couples noticed me and smiled or waved, my wife and her lover were so engrossed in each other that they did not even glance in my direction. As the elevator door opened and they entered, holding hands, I watched to see which floor they stopped at. The elevator stopped on the 11th floor and then returned to the 3rd floor, where more couples were waiting to go down to the lobby. I made my way back down to the registration desk. I know this is an unusual request, but I have an urgent message for Councilman Anderson that I need to deliver to him personally, I said, showing my government identification. Could you tell me which room he is in? The young woman at the desk looked uneasy. Sir, I am really not supposed to give out that information. Young lady, if it was not of the utmost importance, do you think I would be here in my uniform? She nodded and then checked her registry. He is in room 1107. Thank you, miss. I took the elevator to the 11th floor. The sign pointing to rooms 1101 to 1120 directed me to the left. I walked past room 1107, checked to make sure no one else was around, and put my ear to the door. I could hear quiet conversation, and that was all, so I continued down the hall until I found the door leading to the stairs. I figured it might lock behind me, so I placed my handkerchief between the door and the latch. I checked my watch. Midnight. Grace said her mother usually came home between 2 and 3 a.m., and once, recently, at 7 a.m., so I had a long wait. But again, my Army training and patience paid off. Through the window in the door, I could see room 1107, so I would not miss them when they were done with their rendezvous. As I waited, I tried to focus on the task at hand, but I could not stop imagining her lover with his hands all over my wife. I could say my heart was broken, but it went much deeper than that. I felt like my life was spiraling into a dark void filled only with pain, rejection, and humiliation. I knew I had to stay strong for my daughter's sake, but knowing that the woman I loved more than anything on earth and trusted completely was, at that very moment, giving herself to another man filled me with overwhelming sorrow. Around 1:30, I stepped out of the stairwell and pressed my ear against their door. I could barely make out some noises. It sounded like moaning. And then I distinctly heard my wife shout, "Yes, oh God, yes, do it, Paul, do it harder." And then she screamed, a scream I knew well from when she climaxed with me. Tears streamed down my face as I went back to the stairwell. I figured they would be wrapping things up soon and leaving their room within the next hour. At 2 a.m., I left the stairwell and stood against the wall outside their room, waiting for them to come out. My cell phone was set to record video, and 15 minutes later, I heard the chain being removed and the door open. I started recording as they stepped out of the room. He had his arm around her, and she leaned against him, smiling. Sandra looked freshly showered and pleased with herself. Paul Anderson looked equally satisfied. They shared a brief kiss and turned toward the elevators. "How's the affair going, Sandra? Looks like you two had a great time," I said. Sandra finally noticed me and looked like she was about to faint. She put her hand on her heart and cried out, "Oh, Michael, no! Oh, God, please no! You were not supposed to see this!" And she collapsed to her knees. It took her lover a few seconds more to realize who I was. Then he said, "Hey, man, this is really not what it looks like. She was just helping me with my new campaign." "Yeah, I can see that," I replied. "I guess sleeping with her and ruining her marriage is a new campaign tactic. I wonder how the voters will feel about that when the news gets out that you've been having an affair with an Army officer's wife while he was overseas." "Wait a minute. No, there was no sex involved. Tell him, Sandra." Mr. Council Member, do not insult my intelligence. I saw the kissing at my house and on the dance floor, and I heard the moaning and the do-it. Paul through the door. You have won my wife. She is all yours. I am sure you are both proud that it all happened behind my back while I was dodging bullets thousands of miles away. You are cowards, both of you. Even my daughter knows what you have been doing. Anderson stood there, speechless, and my wife remained on the floor, crying. Do not bother coming home tonight, Sandra. Spend the night with your lover. I am going to comfort our daughter, and Monday I will file for divorce, right after I let the media know what kind of man is running this city. I have 30 days of emergency leave, so stay away until I go back. Then you can decide how to live the rest of your life. Michael, please, my wife pleaded. Please what? Sandra, please forgive that you've been with another man the whole time I have been deployed, maybe even longer. Please do not tell Grace what you've been doing. She already knows. Sandra, she is the one who told me to come home. I do not know why you did what you did, but you obviously have your reasons. I hope you two are in love, because you have only each other now. I turned and walked toward the elevator. I am sorry, Michael, she sobbed. Sorry for what? Sandra, sorry I found out. Sorry I caught you with your new love. Sorry I ruined your new life as the town's social queen. I watched you two from the moment you left our house until you just walked out of room 1107, and not once did I see you show any regret. Quite the opposite. You looked as happy as any couple could be with each other. Have a nice life. No, scratch that. Just drop dead, both of you. And I stepped into the elevator and pressed the lobby button. When I got home, I found Grace waiting for me. I could tell she had been crying. She ran to me and hugged me tightly. Oh, Daddy, I've missed you so much. I am so glad you're home. I missed you too, sweetheart, more than you know. Did you find them, Dad, Mom, and the councilman? Yes, honey, I found them, and I am sorry to say you were right. I do not think your mom will be coming home for a while. I don't care, Daddy. She has been ignoring me almost since you left. Please take me with you when you go back. Honey, I have to return to Afghanistan in a month, and as much as I wish you could be with me, you need to stay here. I can't stay with her. Daddy, I hate her. No, Grace, no matter what your mother has done to me in our marriage, she is still your mother. She doesn't love me, Dad, she sobbed, wrapping her arms around me. I held her close as she cried. I finally convinced Grace to go to bed, and I secured the house, including setting the door chains just in case Sandra tried to come home. I had no proof that Sandra and her lover had used any of our bedrooms for their trysts, but I did not want to take a chance, so I slept on the couch, even though I was not sure they had not had sex there either. Sleep came only in short bursts, 45 minutes here, half an hour there. I kept thinking about how I would handle the situation when Sandra came to collect her clothes and personal belongings she would need for the next 30 days. I could have been kind and taken a hotel room, leaving the house to her, but I just couldn't bring myself to be that generous. She was the one who destroyed our marriage, so she could at least deal with the inconvenience of being out of her home for a month. Besides, her lover would probably be happy to have her. They had been acting like a married couple. Now they could live like one, at least for a while. Grace and I slept until noon, or at least on and off until then. I got up first, made coffee, and managed to prepare some toast and scrambled eggs for us. When Grace finally came out of her room, we made small talk while we ate. As we were rinsing the dishes and loading the dishwasher, the phone rang. Grace and I exchanged a look, and then she answered it. Hello? Oh, hi, Mom. Yes, he is here. No, I do not think he wants to talk to you. Why would he? There was a pause while she listened. Mom, really, Dad and I both find it hard to believe you are sorry. It is not like you just kissed the guy once. You have been having an affair with him ever since Dad deployed. Another pause. Yes, I was the one who told Dad I needed him to come home. Another pause. Mom, you have ignored me for months. The only thing you have cared about, the only thing that has been important to you, is your affair with Paul Anderson. Another pause. Mom, please use your head. Why would I tell Dad not to hurt Councilman Anderson? That man deserves to be hurt, and hurt badly, for what he has done. Another pause. Sorry, Mom. That is not going to happen. Goodbye. Grace turned to me. She seems scared, Dad, like she doesn't understand what is going on. It's like she thinks her cheating on you is no big deal and can't figure out why you don't want her to come home. She doesn't understand. No big deal. Well, I promise that before I am done with the two of them, she will understand what she has done and just how many people she has hurt with her behavior. Things were quiet around the house for most of the day. I tried not to think about what Sandra might be doing with her lover, and Grace tried to keep my mind occupied with conversation. We talked about what would be best for her when I went back to Afghanistan. I thought she would be happy staying at home, going to her school, being with her friends. But Grace was worried her friends would turn on her once they found out what her mother had done. I told her that true friends would stand by her, but she was not convinced. We decided that I would call my mother to see if Grace could stay with her until my deployment ended, hopefully in another 5 or 6 months. Later in the afternoon, the phone rang again. It was Sandra. I answered, but as soon as I heard her say, Michael, please let me explain, I handed the phone to Grace without saying a word. What, Mom? Grace's voice was firm and cold, and she held the phone away from her ear so I could hear what Sandra was saying. Grace, I need to talk to your dad. I told you, Mom, he doesn't want to talk to you. But I need to explain. Explain what? Mom, what could you possibly tell Dad that would justify what you and Paul Anderson have been doing for the last 6 months? It is not what you think, Grace. Yes, Mom, it is exactly what Dad and I think. You have betrayed both of us in the worst way possible. Shame on you, Mom. Shame on you. Grace was shouting at her mother at this point. I could hear Sandra crying. I did not mean to hurt anyone. Grace. Well, you did hurt people, Mom. People who loved you more than anything in the world, and you broke the heart of the one man who would die for you. I hope you are proud of yourself, Mom. I hope your affair was worth it, because it cost you your family, whatever that is worth to you. I just hope that one day you wake up from this fantasy world you're living in and realize how selfish and foolish you have been. Oh, please, Grace, I love you and your dad. Yeah, right, Mom. And pigs might fly. If you love us, you have a strange way of showing it. I'd hate to see what you would do if you hated us. Now, do you need anything, or can I go back to spending time with my dad? There was the sound of Sandra crying. I need some things, she said softly. I need some clothes, and I need my medication. The last part came out as a whisper. What medication would that be, Mom? Oh, God, my pills, my birth control pills. Oh, of course. How could I forget? We could not have you carrying Paul's illegitimate child, could we, Mom? That would really complicate things, wouldn't it? Hard to dance when you are pregnant. Well, I will tell Dad, and I am sure we can pack your clothes and your pills. And my makeup, too. Grace. Of course. Mom, you need to keep looking your best for the councilman when you are out in public. I will make sure everything is out by the curb by 6 p.m. tonight so you can pick it up. Have a good night, Mom. She hung up the phone and immediately started crying. I put my arms around my daughter. You were pretty tough on your mom, Grace. I know, she sobbed. I am not proud of it, but I am so angry I could not help it. I just had to get it out. I understand. Sweetheart, we will get through this. Grace, we won't let them win. I hugged her again and left her to pack up her mother's things. I went to my office. I needed time to think, and there were a lot of things I had to do in the coming days. My military training kicked in, helping me work through everything systematically. I was an expert at planning operations, and this was, in many ways, a battle. The usual tasks were straightforward. Find a good divorce lawyer, cancel our joint credit cards, get a credit card in my name and one for Grace, change the beneficiary on my life insurance and retirement plans to Grace, and transfer half of the money from our checking and savings accounts into accounts accessible only by Grace and me. The more challenging tasks involved dealing with Councilman Anderson. He needed to be held accountable, and in a way that would expose him as the cowardly, wife-stealing scumbag he was. Part of the solution came at 8 p.m. that evening in the form of a phone call, which I answered. Harris residence. Michael Harris? I did not recognize the voice. Yes, this is Captain Michael Harris. Captain Harris, my name is Robert Wilson. I am a city council member and a friend of Councilman Anderson. I was wondering if we could talk about the misunderstanding involving you, your wife, and the councilman last night. Misunderstanding? Is that the city's official take on my wife and Paul Anderson's scandal at the Westin Hotel until 2 a.m. this morning? Now, there is no need for that kind of talk. We are just talking about a little late-night party between two consenting adults who might have had a bit too much to drink and got carried away. I am sure if we talk about it, we can clear everything up. There is nothing to talk about, Robert. Councilman Anderson has been having an affair with my wife for the past 6 months while I have been in Afghanistan, and last night I caught them. I understand how upsetting that must be for you, Captain, but I am hoping we can find a way to resolve this for everyone's benefit. Who is everyone, Robert? My only concern is for my daughter. The rest of you can go to hell. I am sorry you feel that way, Captain. The councilman is a powerful figure in this community, and anything that could tarnish his reputation might result in some, let's say, negative consequences for whoever is responsible for that. Are you threatening me, Robert? Just stating the fact, Captain. I would hate to see anything happen to you or anyone you care about. Let me tell you something, Robert, and I suggest you listen carefully. I have spent the last 6 months dealing with insurgents, meeting them head-on, and making their lives miserable. Do not think for a second that I will back down from a fight with a small-town, wife-stealing councilman. You and your friend have never encountered an adversary like me. I do not care how powerful you think you are taking on the wrong man. That is something my soon-to-be ex-wife forgot to mention to Paul Anderson before she got involved with him. You might have money and influence, Robert, but I have every man and woman within 100 miles who has served in the United States military. We do not like men who take advantage of soldiers' wives while they are risking their lives overseas. In fact, we despise them. Here is some advice, Councilman Wilson. Stay as far away from Councilman Anderson as possible, or you might find yourself caught in the crossfire that is coming his way. Captain, let us be reasonable. Surely there is a sum of money, say a large sum of money, that could be exchanged to smooth things over and heal the wounds caused by this unfortunate incident. There are no wounds, Robert. There is just cold, calculated rage that a man like Paul Anderson could take advantage of a soldier's wife while he was fighting for his country, and there is not enough money in the world to make that disappear. The only way this can end to my satisfaction is for Anderson to feel the pain he has caused my daughter and me, and you can relay that message to him. Tell them to enjoy their time together while they can, because I promise that soon they may not feel like being together at all. Captain, listen, I am in a difficult position here. If this story breaks, a lot of people will suffer. There must be a way we can make this go away. Well, if you are serious about that, it could start with Anderson publicly admitting that he has been having an affair with a soldier's wife while that soldier was overseas. Then he can apologize, admit his wrongdoing, step down from his position, and disappear from public life. He could even take my unfaithful wife with him as a consolation prize. Nothing less than that will stop me from publicly exposing him and bringing him to his knees. Damn, you are serious about this, aren't you? As serious as I have ever been about anything, Robert. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to prepare dinner for my daughter. And I hung up. Grace came in from the garage. I put Mom's clothes and stuff out by the curb, and someone in a black Mercedes picked it up. Well, for your mom's sake, let's hope that person was sent by Anderson, or those will be some fancy clothes for sale at Goodwill. I smiled at Grace. I am not sure what Goodwill would do with her birth control pills. Grace giggled. I packed her regular clothes, but couldn't bring myself to include any of her fancy lingerie. She has some pretty revealing outfits I have never seen before. Just looking at them makes me sick. It's okay, Grace. Thank you for taking care of that. She nodded. You know you will have to talk to her eventually. I know. I will when I am ready and the time is right. The rest of the weekend passed without incident. Grace helped me with the laundry while I worked on my plan to bring down Councilman Anderson. On Monday morning, I called a friend at the local newspaper and arranged to meet him. Tom Jenkins met me for coffee at a diner. He was a good guy and a respected reporter, and a few years ago, he had been a sergeant in my National Guard unit. What can I do for you, Captain? Tom, I have some information for you, and what you do with it is up to you. It might sound self-serving, and in a way, it is. As you know, our Guard unit has been deployed to Afghanistan for the past 6 months. Tom nodded. What you might not know is that during this time, Paul Anderson has been publicly having an affair with the wife of one of our soldiers. Who is the soldier? I would rather not say, Tom, unless absolutely necessary. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't want it getting out. I have seen them together, very close. The rumor is that she is separated from her husband and is getting a divorce. That is not true, Tom. The husband had no idea about the affair until a week ago. There is no separation except for the deployment, and no divorce, at least not yet. I understand, Captain, but I cannot make baseless accusations against a city council member without proof. Do you have evidence of the affair? I do. I showed him the photos and videos I had taken. I would appreciate it if the woman's face could be blurred a little. Tom immediately understood and looked uncomfortable. Are you sure you want to go through with this, Mike? The truth will eventually come out. I shook my head. I know, Tom, but I will have to deal with the shame. It is not like I knew about it while it was happening. While Anderson was sleeping with my wife, I was thousands of miles away in a war zone. The real shame is on Anderson. You are one of us, so you know how much of a betrayal it is to take advantage of a soldier's wife while he is in harm's way. Tom looked troubled and nodded. Let me see what I can do. Are you sure it has been going on the whole time you have been away? Yes, there are other people who have known about it the entire time. People who cannot be identified for their safety. I transferred the photos and videos to his phone, and we spent another 10 minutes talking about the 3 guys from our unit who did not make it back. Then we shook hands and went our separate ways. My next step was to find a good divorce lawyer. I found a few names online and, after checking their references, chose one that seemed promising. Rachel Collins, Esquire, had an office downtown, and I made an appointment for that afternoon. When I arrived, I was surprised to find that Rachel stood for Rachel Jane, a no-nonsense woman about 50 with graying hair. Captain Harris, what can I do for you? I liked how she got straight to the point. I need a divorce, and I can tell you up front it is not going to be a pleasant one. She raised an eyebrow. There is no such thing as a pleasant divorce, Captain, but I am listening. Why will your divorce be unpleasant? Because while I have been in Afghanistan, the councilman of this town has been sleeping with my wife regularly. Her eyes widened, and she dropped her pen. You mean Anderson? I nodded. Yes. Captain, you have my full attention. For the next 30 minutes, I explained everything while she took notes, stopping occasionally for clarification. So, your daughter, Grace, she is an only child, and she is 15? How is she coping? She hates it. It is tearing her apart. She does not want to stay with her mother when I go back to Afghanistan. Well, she is old enough that the court will consider her wishes, but since she cannot go with you, is there another option besides her mother? My mother. I will call her to see if she will take Grace until my deployment ends in 6 months. I am sure she would love to have her granddaughter with her. We talked for nearly an hour. I provided all the information about our finances, and she advised me to talk to my wife to see if there was any way to move past what had happened. I told her if she had seen the look in their eyes when they were together, She would understand why reconciliation was impossible. I wanted the divorce papers ready as soon as possible. Another week passed. Sandra only called the house 5 times to speak with me. Each time, I told her I would let her know when and where and ended the conversation quickly. On Friday, my attorney informed me that the divorce papers were ready to be served. She just needed to know where. I told her I would invite Sandra to my home the following Monday at 2 p.m., while Grace was at school, and she could be served then. I called Sandra's cell phone and told her I wanted to meet on Monday at 2 p.m. at the house. She tried to keep me on the line to start her obviously rehearsed explanation, but I cut her off, telling her she would have plenty of time to talk on Monday. Sandra arrived a few minutes before 2 p.m., and we sat down at the kitchen table. When I saw her, my heart ached. She looked so beautiful. I guess her affair with Anderson had been good for her. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, just water, please." "I know you want to explain, and I will give you the chance to do that." "Thank you, Michael. I do not want to catch you off guard, though, so I need to tell you that someone will be here shortly to serve you with divorce papers." Her face went pale. "Why, Michael, I do not want a divorce. I did not want you to have an affair with Paul Anderson for 6 months either, so I guess neither of us gets what we want. Michael, please, if you just listen to me, you will understand why this happened and how we can move past it. Go ahead, talk. You know I worked on Paul's election campaign. We were together a lot at events and precinct walks, and we became friends. After you were deployed, I was lonely and depressed, and Paul took me out to lunch and let me vent. He really helped me deal with missing you. Then one night, he invited me to a dinner event with him. He said there would be several important couples there, and that it would be best if I used my maiden name and left my wedding rings at home to avoid starting any rumors. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now I see that taking off my rings was a mistake. We met a lot of people that night, and they all thought I was single. When did the sex start?" She looked down. "Not right away. We did dance closely that night, and when he took me home, he kissed me good night." "And you let him?" "I was lonely, Michael, and I had just spent a romantic evening with a charming man who was well respected and who treated me like royalty." "Treated you like royalty while your husband was at war, and that gave you the right to cheat on me?" "No, it didn't, but I was confused. You were so far away, and I missed you terribly, and I don't know. He just made me feel special." I nodded for her to continue. "We started having dinner a few times a week after that and attending more events together. I was having such a good time with him that it made me miss you less." "The sex?" She looked down again. "You had been gone a month. Paul and I were going out 2 or 3 times a week. One night, after a nice dinner, he asked me to come home with him." "And you went?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I did. I felt terrible afterward. I actually got sick and asked him to take me home. I told him I could not see him anymore, that I loved my husband, and I was horrified that I had been unfaithful while you were at war. But you changed your mind again." She nodded, looking down. "Paul left me alone for a few days. Then he called me and said he missed me. He said he wanted to see me again, but just as friends. He promised he would never put me in that position again, that he felt bad about what had happened." "So you saw him again?" "Yes. That week he took me to a party at a friend's house. It was a small gathering, just a few couples, all important people. At some point, the wife of a well-known doctor asked me how I managed to win over the town's most eligible bachelor. I was caught off guard and didn't know what to say, so I told her I was separated from my husband and we were getting a divorce. In a small town like this, word spread quickly, and I felt trapped. Grace was away at a camp, and I ended up spending the weekend with Paul. And the rest, as they say, is history. Yes, I am deeply ashamed that I hurt you and Grace, Michael. It is the worst thing I have ever done, and I would give anything to take it back." "But you can't." "No, I can't." "Do you love him?" "I don't know if I love him, I like him a lot. We have fun together. Yes, I remember. Fun. Is he a better lover than me? No. Oh, I don't know. It is just different. Have you been staying with him since I caught you at the hotel? Yes. And still sleeping with him? Yes. Are you planning to marry him? I don't know. We have talked about it. The doorbell rang. I think that is for you, Sandra. She got up slowly and went to the door. Are you Sandra Harris? She nodded. Yes, and was handed an envelope. You have been served. For a long time, Sandra stood there, staring out the door, holding the envelope. When she finally closed the door and turned around, I saw she was crying. So, it is really over between us, Michael. Yes, Sandra, it is really over. You made sure of that. But I love you so much. No, you loved the life we had, but you threw it away. Now you have to find a new life. What about Grace? She wants to stay with my mother until I return from my deployment. Sandra broke into sobs. Oh, God, what have I done? The next day, there was a photograph on the front page of the local newspaper with the headline, Who is the mystery woman leaving a hotel room with Councilman Anderson? Under the photo of Sandra and the councilman kissing as they exited room 1107, the caption read, Does her husband, an Army captain serving overseas, know what's happening? The story detailed the charity event they had attended together and stated that hotel records confirmed the councilman had booked the room for the night and that the couple was photographed leaving the room at 2 a.m. The article also mentioned unverified rumors that the two had been meeting regularly for the past 6 months while the woman's husband was deployed in Afghanistan. The newspaper justified publishing the story due to the councilman's position and the nature of his actions against a soldier serving his country. The story caused an uproar almost immediately. The councilman's office went into damage control, claiming the story was completely false, that Councilman Anderson would never do anything to jeopardize someone's marriage, especially a soldier's. They also claimed the photograph was fake and that some unidentified individuals were out to damage the councilman's reputation. He announced a press conference for later that afternoon to address the issue. It all sounded convincing, but unfortunately, over the past 6 months, many people had seen Anderson and Sandra together. They had never been discreet about their relationship in public. So one by one, as his friends and supporters began to distance themselves, several people anonymously contacted the newspaper to confirm they knew the couple was having an affair. They expressed outrage upon learning that the woman's husband was a soldier deployed overseas during the affair. That afternoon, Councilman Anderson held his press conference, but none of his city council colleagues stood by him. Only his staff were present, and even half of them were conspicuously absent. The press was there, though, and they recorded the entire event as Anderson vehemently denied the accusations, insisting that he and the woman were just acquaintances and had done nothing to dishonor her or her husband. Halfway through his speech, Sandra pushed her way through the crowd and approached the microphone. To Anderson's shock, she declared, "My name is Sandra Harris. I am the wife of Captain Michael Harris, and for the past 6 months, I have been having an affair with Councilman Anderson." At that moment, Anderson tried to push her away, claiming, "I don't know this woman. She is lying." "Yes, you do know me, you liar, and it is time we both come clean about what we have done. I am so ashamed of what I have done to my husband that I want to die, but I will not let you lie about it." She turned to Anderson, who was now red with embarrassment and fury. "Paul, you knew I was married and that my husband was in Afghanistan, yet you pursued me, and I was foolish enough to go along with it. Now I have humiliated and lost the only man who has ever truly loved me." Tears streamed down her face. "I am heartbroken and will regret this for the rest of my life." Sandra then looked directly into the camera and said, "I am sorry. Michael, I love you." She left as reporters shouted questions at the councilman, who turned and stormed back into City Hall. I have to admit, hearing all this in public damaged my already fragile ego, but I knew the risk I was taking when I went to Tom Jenkins. The next day, when the city council president announced that Anderson had resigned and that the council would manage the city until a new member could be elected, I should have felt satisfaction. But instead, all I felt was a deep, empty loneliness. I missed my wife more than I ever thought possible. Tom called me later that day to tell me that Anderson had packed up and left town without leaving a forwarding address, and that my soon-to-be ex-wife had not gone with him. I spent as much time as I could with Grace during my remaining leave, and in my last week, I allowed Sandra to move back into the house. Grace and I went to my mother's home 60 miles away, where I enrolled her in school, promising I would return for her as soon as my deployment was over. The next week, I was on a plane back to Afghanistan, my heart filled with anger that I planned to unleash on the enemy. What happened to Sandra? A few weeks later, she moved in with Anderson, and the two left town. Did I return from Afghanistan? Yes, but I was severely injured, and Grace helped me recover. I lost a leg in an ambush. Now, I work as a design specialist for a major technology company, living with my daughter and occasionally speaking about the challenges soldiers face while serving overseas. What do you think of my decision to confront Sandra and her lover? How would you have handled the situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Thanks for hanging out with me on today's episode. Brother, I'm Jack, host of this podcast, and it's great having you here. If today's story hit home, send it on to a buddy who might need it. Remember, we're all in this together, turning life's curveballs into wins. If you have an opinion or story to share, then drop a line in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out. Until next time, keep your chin up and keep pushing forward. Stay strong, folks.